Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well considering we had the storm last night. Different parts of our state fared better than others. So, my personal thoughts and prayers are with you and your families. We do have a scheduled broadcast, and so we will continue on with that. Tonight, we're going to talk to parents from the state of New Jersey, different areas in our state, just to see how they plan to what their plans are, what their expectations are as we go back to school amid COVID-19. I'm calling it 2.0 Delta. And, with the king of New Jersey saying we don't have an option for virtual learning anyway, anyhow. And then some districts are, prepared to use snow days or, figure other things out if there is an outbreak in their school. So we have several guests this evening, and all of them are parents. And I'm going to introduce the parents first from Middlesex County, and her name is Sabrina. I have to get her in. I haven't been here in a while, so you guys bear with me. Okay, I don't know how to get you back, Sabrina. That's me. That's you. Save. Hold on. I'm having some issues. I don't want to see myself. All right. I haven't been here in a while. Here you go. There you are. I had to play with the screen. Good evening, my dear. And I thank you for joining us here on Real Talks for Real Life. And so just tell us what your children's ages are. Mm-hmm. And if you want to say where you are geographically in New Jersey, that's fine as well.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me, and thank you for making me part of this conversation. And my name is Subarna Sani, and I am a parent. I'm joining this conversation as a parent of a college freshman and an incoming 8th grader in South Brunswick School District. And once again, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this talk.
Okay, good. So we're going to bring in, and thank you again for joining. We have another mom. Again, all of us are moms, but we're talking specifically to moms who, have kids are going back into schools. So we're going to add Miss Etiana to the stream. Hi, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. I live in Linden, and I have four kids. 2 are in school. My oldest is going to the 4th grade, and my second is entering the 1st.
Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
The next parent is here. She is also going to speak to us as a CEO of a nonprofit organization, which is known as Parent Impact. But primarily, Miss Jamila is going to talk about her awesome daughter and what her plans are for her. Welcome, Jamila.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. And welcome back. I've been missing the show.
Yeah, well, I had to get right, so now I'm back.
Summer break. So I'm Jamila Muhammad, CEO of Parent Impact. I'm also a proud mom of Layla. She's going into her senior year in high school, so we're in back to school mode, but also college application mode. Right. So it's pretty hectic over here. I live in Irvington, but I am born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. Also work in Newark, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And Parent Impact is statewide and nationwide, but we're based in Newark, New Jersey. So we've been helping a lot of parents, talking them through anxieties about returning to school.
Yeah, and that's why I thought tonight was really important. It was important to have you here and your partner in Parent Impact. My favorite, I'm waiting for her to look up. My favorite co-founder, and also on behalf of the National Parents Union, the national director of organizing, we're going to have Ms. Tafshir here, who's also a mom, but she has all adult children, so she did it, and it's over. No, I'm only joking, but yeah.
Yes, I do. Thank you. I'm happy to be here tonight with all of these beautiful moms and my awesome sister. We have missed the show. We're happy that it's back. I'm Tafshia Cosby, Director of Organizing for the National Parents Union. I'm also co-CEO of Parent Impact. I am a mom of all adult children, although I do have 3 grandchildren. So I'm still in the game. I'm happy to be here tonight discussing education reopening. I do talk with lots of parents across the country, and there is definitely a feeling that parents are not part of this conversation. So I'm happy to be part of this conversation with you ladies tonight.
Well, thank you. And thank you for joining us. So we all know that King Murphy has said there's no virtual, right? I'm just going to start because I know some schools have already started, actually. And one school, there was a small outbreak, and what the administration decided to do, I can't remember the district, but they're starting to use their snow days in September. So what does that look like in December if, God forbid, there are continuous outbreaks? And what do we do as parents? So what are your thoughts? We're going to go around and just ask, do you think there should be an option for virtual like it was before? And do you prefer virtual, hybrid, or in person? Anybody can start.
Yeah.
I can start. So I have a 8th grader who will be starting on September 9th, and our school district has decided to go full day in-person instruction mode. As a parent, to answer your question, no doubt there are a lot of skepticism amongst the parents in the community and within me as well, how the thing's going to look like, because with the Delta variant hanging on our head, and the rising number of cases in and around New Jersey, and if I just go by the data and what I see through the published data on DOH website, New Jersey DOH website, it says in Middlesex County, it's 59% or less are just had 1 dose of vaccine. We don't know how many of them are actually school-going children. When you're talking about middle schoolers, how many of them are actually middle schoolers who have actually had 1 dose of vaccine at least. So that brings in, my thought is that now we should be given an option, but however, the mandate is that we all go in person, and as you rightly said, some school districts have opened up, and I think on first, there are a lot of school districts in Middlesex County which have opened up. But personally, I feel that now we should be given an option of doing a hybrid learning.
Okay. All right. So we have one for hybrid. Etiana, what are your thoughts?
Well, now hearing that they're using their snow days when these children get sick, that doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like parents should be given the option, if their kid is sick, to join virtually. That makes a little bit more sense to me. I prefer my children to be in school. I always wonder if they wash their hands, they're being precautious. When they do come home, I make sure they take their clothes off, wash your hands, get in the bath, put your home clothes on. So, but I definitely think that parents should be at least given an option for their children to join virtually.
Jamila, did your daughter do virtual in her junior year? What do you think about for virtual, hybrid, or in person?
So I have parented public district school, charter school, public charter school. And now I'm down to my daughter, who is a senior, who is in private school. And so last school year, they were one of the schools in the state of New Jersey that were fully in person.
Okay.
They have been using the pool testing method that many of the colleges are now using, where they go through the weekly testing, and it's a pool of samples, and anyone who is a part of a sample that tests positive, they're contact traced and then immediately quarantined. It's worked really well for them, and for the social emotional reasons, I do prefer the children to be in school in person, but as long as the environment is safe. So I totally understand parent fears about safe. We are lucky enough to be a part of a school community where there were conversations with parents before returning in person. This year, I have to be honest, I don't feel like there have been as many conversations with parents. And I know a lot of parents throughout public district schools, charter schools alike, private schools as well, have not felt included in return to school conversations this school year. So I'm for in person, but I need to see the plans. What are the plans for testing? Are they requiring vaccinations? What's the protocol for when someone tests positive? And so I just encourage all parents to ask those types of questions to their school. Don't wait for the school to have some sort of a parent meeting or a town hall. We'll be holding our breaths forever if we sit around and wait for that. So I encourage everyone to be proactive and ask those questions.
So, Tef, share, what is the National Parents Union's take, if they have one, as far as options for return to school? I mean, because we are national and you're a national organization, but if you want to talk to New Jersey.
Sure. Well, I think I want to speak from a lens of national. The National Parents Union has been doing polls of parents throughout the United States for over a year now. We started it last year in April when COVID first started. So our latest polling data from June actually shows that 54% of parents across the nation actually would like to have an option. They would like to have an option of either in person or some type of remote learning. So with that, we think about it from a lens of specifically for New Jersey, again, where the king has made an edict that there will be no remote learning, that parents should at least be offered an option. So the option that is actually on the table that we have an organization in the state of New Jersey actually working through, there's an organization that's working to do remote learning for parents as an option. They actually have about 20,000 signatures on their petition right now. And it's from a lens of providing another option, right? Not actually fixing or not actually changing the current structure to the current school districts that exist right now, right? So when COVID hit, there needed to be a pivot. The schools needed to make a pivot. For schools where digital education and remote learning was not already set up, they had to make a pivot. So for the option that we're talking about, it would actually just be that another option. There are 30 states that are currently using this online learning option, right? It's actually not called remote learning. It's called online learning options. And it's worked in other states. They've had great success with students and children who are part of these options. So I think the state of New Jersey should at least consider that option for parents. Will it be available this school year? Maybe not, if they push it fast enough. I have had conversations with some of our state Board of Education members, and we discussed what implementation would look like, what this would look like for parents to have this additional option. The curriculum has to be vetted, and the biggest pushback that I got was that there may not be enough parents who actually wanted this, right? Like, even if it's only 1%, right? Even if it's only 1% or 2% of the population of families in New Jersey, I think that it should be offered. I think that parents should have the option to have this online learning and have their kids actually participate. So the difference between this online learning and something like homeschooling, because that's what parents are hearing, right? They're hearing if you want to have your kid homeschooled, then that's your option as a parent. The difference is if you have a child who has special needs or accommodations, such as having a 504 or an IEP, if you homeschool your child, you do not have the option for your child to receive those accommodations or services. Whereby if you enroll your child in a virtual school, you have those special accommodations for your child. So the National Parent Union feels that parents should, again, like Jamila said, be part of every conversation, including their children's education. And 54% of parents across the nation would like to have an option for their schools.
Right. I heard, thank you for that. I heard, Sabrina, the first thing out your mouth was full day, right? I felt the same way, when we had the option of hybrid and half days. For me, I felt a little better that they didn't have to be in the building all day. Mm-hmm. And so it's all day in our district. I'm in Linden Public Schools in Union County. We're here. We have in our education plan, like reopening plan, full days, 5 days a week. There's supposed to be air purifiers in the buildings when it's cold to open the windows and whatnot. But I still would have preferred half days, at least. And then when our district was back, I don't know, Etienne, if your children in elementary had, when they did go back, like if they had certain little groups, like all the kids were in like an A-pod, and all the kids that came in on Monday and Wednesday, they stayed together and they wouldn't separate. That's something that we should have had.
Their main
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
You got to talk up a little bit louder.
I said I don't think they had that. I think they had their main homeroom teacher, and that was it. But they were half days.
So in our school district, we had the pod system. So we had A days, and you had a number of students that would go in on A day, and then another set of students that would go on B day. And so, my take on that is, it's better to do online learning or remote learning than to even send this, just to have her in, because the teacher would be actually on your, every student would be on their device, even when they're in school. But you're sitting there and you're working on your device, you're basically looking at the teacher. And at that time, when we actually went into school, that is the first half of 2021, which is basically this year, or beginning of this year, when they opened up the school and they let the students into the school building and they were doing the pod system. I felt that, it's basically taking away time from their schedule. And it was like little, although we were saying that we obviously wanted some in-person interaction, but they weren't getting that in-person interaction because they were socially distant. They were not allowed to have lunch together. I felt that it's better to be online and stay at home than to expose yourself and go to school and just sit on your desk and just be in front of the screen with very limited interaction with your teacher, with your classmates. I felt that was a wasted effort, that's how I look at it.
What do you think, Jamila? You were in person, so you didn't have the same experience.
Yeah, so I forgot to answer that question with the last round. I do support options just in general, personally, and as an organization, we support choice in our school systems, and so we can't say that we have choice if we don't even have options within one school building. So we had students who, although my daughter's school was in person, they still had the option for the online learning, and the online learning was the same as the regular school day. There were students who had illnesses that compromised their immune systems, so they could not be in person. And when you think about students with any type of special need, whether it's developmental or a medical illness or something like that, we should have some sort of an option. So thinking about the storm that just passed through, as well as the storm that passed through last week. And my prayers go out to everyone who's been impacted by this storm, because I don't think that any of us up here in the Northeast expected for the remnants of a hurricane to hit us so hard. So my prayers go out to everyone impacted by the storm. But in my 9-to-5 job, we had to work remotely yesterday, today, and we'll be working remotely tomorrow, just because of the storm alone. So when you think about things like that, there was a workshop or orientation at my daughter's school that had to be canceled today. I think that schools should still be working in that mindset of having an online option as well as an online backup, because not only are we in a pandemic, this is hurricane season. We're looking at hurricane season all the way through October. And so, anything can happen at any time. And now that we know, after a year and a half of having most of the schools in our state 100% remote, we know that we can do this. So why would we not have an option? It doesn't make sense.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate if I can. And also because my daughter prefers in school, and I have to tell you, she's going to hate me for saying it, she does better in the building right, than she did online. I've never seen a child have the worst. She had the worst tardy record of her life in school when she was remote learning, because she would be late, because she would be, oh, I'm home, I can just, at any moment. So then she would oversleep, and then she'd be like, oh, mommy, I wasn't that late, and it still counts. So I try to explain to her, when you have to be there physically, she was a little bit more motivated. And so for the parents, like, whose children require that physical and they need to be there, and we're comfortable sending them, what then happens to so my daughter's peers? What happens to the ones whose parents say, I'd like for them to be remote? How can we make sure, as parents, that they're getting everything that they need, at home or in person? So, and I have an example. I know some children who were at home doing their learning, and they were at home, but at the babysitter, because their parents had to work. The babysitter's getting paid to make sure that they eat breakfast and lunch, they're clean, they're safe, and then they're not tutors. So that was a challenge, for some parents. And our district, of course, all of them they did provide lunch, but you're not going to send a 7-year-old across town to pick up lunch by themselves. So it would have been easier for them to have the neighborhood school option. I know it's a challenge. It was all a thing, but I think my point is, for parents who want to send their children, we want to make sure that their peers are still able to get the same option if their parents don't want to send them. And Tiana, how did your girls do remotely? I know, because they're younger, so that's a little different.
At first, they were remote, and I saw a shift in their academics. They weren't focusing. They wanted to sleep in the pajamas, the dozing off at the computer, and it just wasn't working for me. Juggling the younger 2, 3, age 1 and 3. So I decided to send them to school. And then my second daughter was really struggling socially. Like, she wanted to be in school, but I tried to explain to her, like, it's not going to be the same. You're going to be wearing a mask. You're going to be socially distanced. But she didn't care. She wanted to, at least be around other children than her siblings. So the next, I guess, what do you call them, semesters?
Yeah.
The next semester, I signed them up to be in school, and it worked out for them. My oldest has to be in front of the teacher, hearing her talk, looking at the books. But I do understand we should still have an option.
Right. Okay.
I just want to add, we also have to be cognizant of the fact that, every school district, the size of the school district, ours is a very large school district. In the high school, in the building, at any given point, we have 3,000 students in the building.
One building?
South Brunswick High School.
Woo.
How do you bring in those children in? We graduated my son graduated high school this summer, and the graduation class is 745 students.
Wow.
So then for this kind of a school district, it's a challenge. And I really, and I know parents want option. I understand that we are working parents. We do want to send our children to school because, it's an added cost at the end of the day to hire a babysitter or, to look for options who would take care of the children when we are at work. But at the same time, it's also a challenge for the school district to bring all these kids in, into the building and to maintain those safety protocols. Although our school district is reopening, I know they have had a plan. They've shared the plan with the school, the parents in the school district. But still, I think that, there should be an option where if you want to keep your child home, you should be able to, or the child is enjoying enjoying the online learning experience, then the child should have an option to exercise that choice.
Right.
At this point in time, we do not have that option. So as I know, there are a lot of parents who work from home, and they would like to exercise that option because they both either one of them are working from home because New York hasn't opened up as yet. Those parents from New Jersey who travel to New York to work, they are still working remotely, and those parents can take care of their children. And in our school district, we have many parents who who live in the suburbs, who work in the city, and they would like to have that option, but unfortunately,
Right.
I know our school district want to offer, they have the capability, and when they did remote learning, our school district did a fantastic job on implementing the remote learning experience for our children. And so I'll just share this with you because this is a big shout out to South Brunswick School District, our superintendent, Scott Feder, who did a fantastic job in implementing the remote learning experience for our students here in South Brunswick. As far as my child is concerned, he was a 7th grader at that time, and he had an older sibling at home, so he got that help, tutoring help from him.
Right.
And they had mom and dad, so we working from home. So we all 4 of us were home at that point in time. So he did miss his friends. He missed the social interaction. So I don't know if other school districts did that, but it was virtual. They would get a HAP class and they would kind of hang out together on
right, like little study groups.
Yeah, study group, but it was like a free time for them just to hang out and talk to their friends. And the teacher would not be in that room, but they would just be there and they would kind of do a social interaction. Okay. But yes, they would miss that human touch, which I understand he misses his activities in school and that, that human connection. But as far as learning is concerned, I think our teachers and our school district did a fantastic job. I didn't see a shift in my child's learning, so I can only speak from that experience.
Okay. Well, I'm going to talk to what you said, Tafshir. You mentioned we were talking in the backstage about the options, the only options for parents in New Jersey. Can you just speak to that a little bit? I'll post the actual statute, but just give us some information about home or out of school instruction and for students who are in general education and what that looks like.
Sure. Can I just go back to the last question a little? So is virtual school for every child? No, right? Mm-hmm. There's data to show that, there are percentages of children who actually learn better virtually. And then there were children who actually learn better in the classroom. There are also data to show that the incidences of things like bullying actually went down when kids were virtually learning. So I think the question was, how do parents know that the curriculum that the kids are getting in the virtual learning is actually helping their students to learn, right? It's the same as in person, right? You as a parent, you show up to those school board meetings, you look at that curriculum, you vet that curriculum, you make sure that it's one that's actually working for your child, right? It's the same advocacy. It's the same advocacy that you would do if your child was in person. It's the same conversation. How well does the school do? What is the percentage of the students who actually graduate? How many of them go to college, right? It's those same conversations because, quite honestly, in under-resourced communities, we had schools that weren't working for children in person, right? We had low graduation rates. We had kids who were reading on low scores. So, having that option for families is important, but it's the same process. You vet the school, you vet the virtual school, just like you would be involved in your child's in-person school. So I just wanted to answer that question. So currently on the statute is 6A:16-10.2, and it speaks to a child who needs to be home or receiving out of school instruction for general education. These are for general education students. These are not for students who receive any type of special accommodations for reasons other than a temporary or chronic health condition. So the first one, the student is mandated by state law and rule for placement in an alternative education program, but placement has not been immediately available. So in parent ease, that's for a child who has been removed from their current school district for whatever reason, right? They're going to be placed in an alternative education program, but they currently don't have any room, right? They may not have a spot. So your child is actually able to get home school services. They actually contract, the sending school district would contract with an organization, usually a teacher who works outside of the school district, and they would come to your child's house. Traditionally, they would come to your child's house and they would teach them there. But now we have actually virtual learning, so they might actually come to them on a computer. The second one is a student who's placed on a short or long-term suspension from participating in general education program. Your child did something, they broke a rule, and they got placed on an out-of-school suspension. So it's the same process. You would have a teacher either come to your house to teach your child, usually 2 days a week, or now with remote, they would actually teach them remotely. So the third one is a court order, right, that requires a student to receive instructional services in a home or the out-of-school setting. So this is an actual court order. So it could be maybe a child that's in foster care, or for whatever reason, you have a court order that says your child cannot be inside of a school building. So it's the same process. So, looking at this, what's missing from this list, based on what we now know as parents, having gone through COVID, is what's missing is a parent actually asking for this, requesting this, if they feel that the school is not safe enough for their child to actually be in that environment. That is what is missing from this list. Jamila and I, with another organization we work with, we actually lobbied the state last year to actually add this final number, right? Actually, parents having this choice to be able to decide whether their child needs to have in-home or remote learning. We were dismissed, quite honestly, right? And I think we really just didn't have enough parents who were part of that conversation. But right now, those are the only choices that are available. And this is a very small percentage of children who actually have this, right? This is less than 1% of children who actually use one of these three, either programs or opportunities to actually have homeschooling. So I think we as parents need to rally around trying to add, again, a fourth one that's important, which is a parent request to actually have their child be in remote school or virtual school, or again, better still, let's just provide the option all the time. So a parent doesn't have to go through this statute and learn this statute and evoke this statute. It's always available because it's an option for parents.
What's funny, when I'm deviated slightly, just because you talk about parents' rights and their ability to make an ask. I know this year, recently, the state actually is now, I don't know if they approved it or they're entertaining allowing a parent to decide if their student should repeat a grade or to be retained because of learning loss, or, they didn't feel like they got enough. Was that passed, or is that on the table?
It was passed, although
okay.
I do feel like it did not go far enough, because the original bill that was on the table was that the parent actually would decide because of whatever, they've seen at home, right? We see what's happening to our kids. You feel like your child has not learned enough. You want them to repeat. The original bill that was presented was that the parent had the final say, right? Once the parent goes to the school, they petition the school, they talk to the principal, they talk to the social worker, right? They talk to the team, and the parent actually decides this, and they have the final say. The way the law was actually pushed through was that still the school leader or the principal still is the deciding factor of whether you actually have the ability to retain your child or not. And there was actually already a rule on the book that way. So it didn't change much. There was already one that already said that the school leader or your district superintendent made that final call. So that is still the same way. So I don't feel like that law, that policy actually went far enough, because I think that, it would have been groundbreaking if the parents themselves actually had the ability to make that final decision, because again, we're home with our kids. We know what we're seeing. We know what's happening. We know the trauma that they're facing, and having that parent be able to make that decision, I think, opens the door for other opportunities for parent voices to be in other conversations when we're talking about our kids' education.
The only time I've seen this happen, when the parent actually would do that for their child or ask for them to be retained, was for sports. I'm not kicking anybody's back in or anything like that, but you want that kid to be in that grade when that recruiter or that college scout is coming. So you keep them back another year. I'm looking around. I shook my head. I couldn't understand it, but I was like, is that a thing? But anyway, I said all of that to
wait a minute though, really fast. And right, parents, that's not an easy ask, right?
It's
like
not.
That's not something that as a parent that's easy for you to ask, right? Like you have to really weigh that decision as to what that means for your child, what it means for them to now have to come back into that school building. They are not in the same grade as the their colleagues and their fellow students who came into that building, right? So, the way that they framed it about giving parents the power to make that decision, it was like, well, we don't want to give parents this power, but it's not an easy decision for parents. So once a parent has actually made that decision to say, I need you to retain my child, it's not an easy decision. And again, it wouldn't have been a large percentage of the population
anyway,
of families, right? We're talking about probably less than 1%. But again, it's groundbreaking to give parents that actual opportunity to make those final decisions for their kids.
That was actually a part of my argument in it, that parents actually are allowed to have this power when it comes to, I think do they call it reclassifying?
I don't know the fancy term, but I know they do it for sports.
That's what they call it, when you can leave your child back, because of sports. I'm not judging when it comes to any of that, but if it's okay for sports, why wouldn't it be okay for academics and or social emotional development?
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's so I'm going to throw it out. This is Jamila, y'all, right here, her and Tafshir, and they do education, but they can help you raise your voice also. So I wanted to talk about sports, and that's why I mentioned that when it popped in my brain as far as retention. So in our district, they're going to have full sports. So, but wait, though, we got to be social distant in the classroom, but then we're going to have contact sports. I just don't understand. And I'm going to say, when I came to this district, I guess 22 years ago now, sports was a big thing. And that's all it seemed that the folks cared about, like, was sports, right? And I was like, well, not all the kids play basketball and football, because not to be funny, because my kids didn't, right? When they first came. And then you had some coaches who were selective on who they played. So then, my older children didn't do sports at all, except for like my Pop Warner or, just for leisure. So what are your thoughts, parents, on the hypocrisy, if you will, of you can't learn next to Johnny because it's not safe? But I need you and Sally to go over there and kick that ball together and share the germs on the ball, because we got to win the state division. I'm just trying to be funny, but you know what I'm saying? What are your thoughts, ladies?
I mean, it's true. It's hypocritical, right? It's hypocrisy. It's like you said, we can be together on the field. We can sweat on each other. We can breathe on each other. We can be in a closed locker room with no ventilation, but we can't sit next to each other in a classroom, because that's a problem. It's hypocrisy, and that's just the fact of it.
So I agree with Tafshir on that. That is just hypocrisy, because we want to. We've opened up all our sports, but still we will be sitting far apart, and we'll not be able to do so. We'll be doing social distancing in classroom. I also worry about when you're doing busing. That's another struggle that I have. Busing, you're putting the children in the bus and taking them to school. Obviously, parents don't have time to send, drop them. And I'm sure school district will also not encourage a lot of parents to drive their children to school. That creates another problem, traffic in the
right?
Yep, in the township. So how do you bus these children? And busing has always been a struggle in a lot of school districts, if I'm not wrong. And it has been a struggle in our school district for sure. Mm-hmm. We have one high school, 2 middle school, and if I'm not wrong, 8 or 9 elementary schools. So it's like unison rotation. So obviously there's always a shortage of drivers and buses not running on time. So how do we manage all of that? And I think that's
I bet you that lacrosse team gets to their game on time.
Those are questions which are still up in the air. And,
yeah. Etiana, what do you think about the sports though, and the busing too?
Yeah, I feel like they're still trying to figure it out. And because they haven't figured it out, we're all kind of confused, because we look to them to create the rules. And it's not fair, because they're forcing us to do things and forcing us not to do things based on their concept of trying to get it right. And at this point, I honestly think it's just about compliance and telling us we can't do this, but we can do that. You know, we have to be socially distanced in the classroom, but yet we can share a sweaty ball, you know, amongst what, 20 kids at a time?
Yeah, at the time.
And they're trying to make it make sense, but it doesn't.
I don't know.
Well, I'm a fan of team sports and what it does for children's self-esteem, developing a skill, you know, all of that camaraderie. We can't deny the bias that exists because in some districts, busing was completely non-existent for the last school year. However, sports still took place, team sports throughout the state. And if you have team sports, that includes busing, you know, to and fro. So what are the plans for safety when it comes to busing? Are the students going to be seated in a socially distanced way? Again, this is something that my daughter's school is doing a great job at, and they have the pool testing and things like that. But, you know, when you're doing sports, there is no mask wearing. It's close contact. One of the things that her school and some other schools are doing, they're requiring vaccinations for any eligible age. I believe it's now 12 and up.
12 and up.
They are requiring them to be vaccinated in order to participate in any sports or extracurricular activities. So that's a whole other, you know, argument. But that's one of the things that they're doing to try to reduce the numbers of outbreaks when it comes to athletes, because as we know, last school year in New Jersey, for districts that did return in person, some of the largest clusters that we had came from athletic and social and extracurricular events.
Right.
You know, so the bias there is clear, and you know, we need safety plans in place for everything, and parents need to be clear on what that looks like.
So I want to say something to what you said, Jamila. You said that the district, well, first, and I agree, social benefit of sports is awesome, right? My daughter, I thought she was going to the WNBA, but she changed her mind, so that's okay. But she was like, you know, a freshman, and she was a varsity. They started her on varsity. And so, but last year, she didn't play. You know why she didn't play? Because academically, she didn't cut the mustard, because she was late, she was missing assignments, because virtual didn't work for her. Now, she's not getting a vaccine because we have a choice, right? And so now, what if they say she can't play? Even though she's eligible now academically, what then does that do to her? Or then, you know, do you have to go against your convictions for sports? You see what I'm saying? Like, her life isn't sports, but so it's a win lose. It's I don't know. It's just my mind is blown with the sports part of it. What were you going to say, Sabrina?
Yeah, I just wanted to share. I know of people in our district who are still not vaccinated. I mean, the family is not vaccinated. So we hear, and I'm sure there are a lot of other kids, but how do we, as parents, kind of, you know, I mean, the question is to you and Tafshir and Jamila, honestly, how as a parent, although I know the child is going to the same school district as part, but I mean, if the child is participating in activities, or if they're, you know, forbidden to do sports if they're not they're unvaccinated. However, the child is coming into school, you know, and sitting in the same classroom, wearing a mask, all of that. But the school is not mandating anything like to enter into the classroom, you have to be vaccinated. So potentially we are actually letting the vaccinated population mix with unvaccinated population without any monitoring. You know what I mean? So the risk factor is, and as a parent, what should I be looking at? What would the questions that I need to do to ask any my school district? What should the parent should do in that case?
Are you talking about to socialize your kids? I know you're talking to the other two ladies, but are you speaking specifically to sports or just regular
Just in
classroom?
general, like, sports is just a part of it. But I'm saying that even bringing them to school, and putting them on buses, and how do we kind of, knowing the fact that there are people who are still unvaccinated, what is the kind of questions do you would want, and what are the kind of things that we can do as a parent, and ask those questions to our school district? What choices or what voices do we have?
I think for the schools that have returned, they already know what protocols, what systems and safety measures are in place. But for those who have not yet returned and who are returning after Labor Day, one of my main questions is, and this is regardless of where you stand on the vaccine spectrum, but like you said, if there are protocols in place for things like being vaccinated in order to participate in sports, we still can't police what people do, at home in their private lives, who they come in contact with. So I am a big advocate for that pool testing. Mm-hmm. I know it costs money, but there are federal and state funds that schools and districts have received. And I think that's a really smart way to spend that money. The pool testing has been so effective in the schools that have used it, as well as the universities that have used it, because one part of what it does is it kind of puts you on blast. If you are in a pool that has tested positive, you are contact traced. You're automatically quarantined for a period of time. And we saw throughout last school year, we saw higher numbers in September and October, especially, when there were holidays nearby, like around Halloween time, Thanksgiving time, and Christmas time. But towards that end of the school year, we saw a steady stream of zero positives. People didn't like kind of being put on blast. They didn't like being part of a positive pool. So you had children kind of telling their peers, hey, if we're going to get together socially, let's do it in a responsible way. Let's get together, but let's get together in a socially distanced way. You started seeing less of those large house parties that some of the students, were having, because they didn't like being a part of that positive pool. So that's one thing that I'm a big advocate for. But again, we have to ask the schools those questions and demand, if we don't see safety protocols in place that feel comfortable for us as parents, we have to get some demands on paper, not asks, but we have to get some demands on paper, because these are public funds, right? Public dollars. These are our children. We have to get those demands on paper, get in front of school administration and say, this is our expectation for safety for the school year in order for us to comfortably have our children return in person. And it's not too late to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with Jamila, especially with the pool testing and then having the cluster of children together in classrooms. They can easily detect where, like, who was positive, right? And then really just drill down on that cluster of children to be able to do the contact tracing. And this way it doesn't affect the rest of the children in the building. A lot of problems that I had last year with when schools were thinking about reopening and how they would actually do that reopening. I think the best way that they've shown that it works is if you have those A/B, right? So you know that this set of cluster of kids is coming in on Monday and Wednesday. And then the second set is coming in on Tuesday and Thursday. Well, we did have schools that were open 5 days a week, right? They offered both. They offered the alternate days, and then they offered a full day. In those schools, you did show a larger incidence of positive cases, because you just have kids coming in at different times. You can't track the actual kids who were in this cluster together. So I do agree that's the best way to be able to determine, which student has it, how to contain it within a building. And I'll always say demand. Demand is always in my vocabulary for what parents need to do, right? It's not too late. Have those conversations. Make sure that your school has a plan, right? The plan should have been up back in June. The actual reopening plan should have been up in June. There should have been town hall conversations. Parents should have been invited to the school board meetings to have a conversation about what that plan looks like. It should be a plan that you feel comfortable with as a parent. It should have been a plan that you have input in as a parent. And then also talk to your schools to find out if they have a COVID team in every school. Every school is supposed to have a COVID team. It's supposed to be made up of the staff in the school, the principal, sometimes a parent, depending on the school district. But there should be a team in every single school that actually speaks to if someone gets COVID, what does it look like? Who's going to be contacting the parent? All of those things should actually be happening.
So that was a good question, Sabrina. But to spin your question, your child is in the 8th grade, so he's eligible for vaccine, and so are his peers. At Tiana, your children are not eligible for vaccine, whether you were going to give it to them or not. And in our district, if you look at the plan, it says if a student is found to be COVID positive, right, then their classmates have to quarantine. How do you quarantine a kid if there's no virtual option? That's the first thing. And then these children don't have the option if they would for vaccination. So, and the kids are coming to school. So I'm just saying, I understand your point, Sabrina, like what do I need to say and questions I should ask, right? So what do you think, Etiana, for you and the rest of the elementary school parents? Like do you have any concerns about, if there are outbreaks in the school and what that looks like for your family and how they're going to deal with that? I can't hear you.
I think the best answer was to get tested. That's the only way you can find who's positive and to isolate them. Whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, you can still contract and give the virus. So I think constant testing would be the only option to lessen people getting sick.
I agree with so in our plan though, but if you look at the plan for our district, because I looked at it, they're encouraging folks not in the plan, but in social media and other ways for the children to get tested. They're offering 2 slices of pizza, and you're entered into a raffle, right? Don't forget the King was offering you a beer and a burger way back when they first started doing vaccinations. So I mean, they're trying to get you how they can. But what I'm thinking is, so in the plan it says if the student or the teacher is vaccinated, right, they don't have to be quarantined. But what if they're the carrier at the end of the day? Like, see, I think they're taking the vaccine part and making it seem like it's that's it. You got the vaccine, that's it.
Like it's a fix-all.
Right, but some people still carry it.
Studies have shown
they still carry it.
You can still contract it, give it, and they're separating it as if it's herd immunity. And it's not. I
don't know.
And just to add to that, Etiana's point, I think even if you do cluster pool testing, and I'm concerned about when you put students who are there are plans in school, some school district that you put unvaccinated students in one cluster and vaccinated, and now I wonder what kind of will that give rise to other issues in the school? Bullying.
Yeah. You got the cooties, Jackie, that kind of stuff. Like, okay.
Yeah. So I have those
conversational. It's very stigmatizing. I don't like that at all.
No, me either. Wow. I enjoyed our conversation tonight. I appreciate you ladies for joining and for sharing. Is there anything else that anyone wants to share as your child goes back to school? Any tips for other parents? Like, this is what my family's doing, so I'll share. Cece's going to school because she wants to, and she can't wait, right? She's taking her graduation pictures tomorrow, so she's excited about that. But I actually have her in what they call some people call it the alternative school, but we're calling it the Academy of Excellence. And the reason being, they have smaller classes. And so that was a choice that I made. And she did well when she went back. So she's able to, and so I'm making her go back again. That's my plan. And I know the principal there, Mr. Zaire, he's keeping the kids separate. The teachers are all on board because they want to work. They want to be in the building, and because they love teaching and love learning. So that's what we're doing. We're going to continue to stay. We don't really go anywhere still. Like, we're kind of like, we have our own little group of, she has 4 kids that she's with, and that's all they do. It's just them. So that's pretty much what we're going to continue to do that little, during the year.
So so my son is 14, and he understands the what's going on around him. Of course, he's excited.
Right.
For a year and a half, he'd be entering the school building. I just took him for some volunteering. He was so excited to see the hallways. So but I guess the only thing that as a family that I can, and I can talk to him all the time, that you have to wear. Now, he has to wear a mask, and that's a struggle that, he's a boy, he's 14-year-old, he's active.
Right.
And how much of it the school can, or the teacher would be able to kind of, oversee that they are masked all the time.
All the time.
And is it their nose is covered, or it's not hanging in their neck? And if the teacher has to move out, or they're waiting in their hallways, what are they going to do? So those are my real concern. But yes, we have to keep talking to them to keep their maintain their hygiene standards, keep washing your hands, and all of that. Of course, we will have to keep talking to them and make sure that they understand how important it is to protect themselves right now. And that's all that I can do at this point in time, I guess. Fears are there, but I guess we'll have to just go by
Right.
the flow of we're just going with the motion right now. So, yeah.
Tiana, anything for the elementary moms and dads out there?
We're taking it day by day over there. I know it's 6 of us in here, so we're entertained. We don't have to go anywhere. It's all here. They go to school, they come home, they wash their hands, they know to put their house clothes on after bathing, and that's it. It's with precaution.
I like the idea of house clothes. Like, we do that. You know how, I'm old, so we used to have school clothes. And I never thought of it that way, but we were doing the same thing back in like the 70s. You take your school clothes off, and then, but now you take them off, you throw them in the washing machine. But before it was like, take them off because, you got to keep them clean and whatever. So parent impact, any last words for advice for our parents going back?
Well, I've definitely, in our house, we never stopped doing the whole, when we come in the house, wash our hands, change out of our outside clothes into our house clothes, that kind of thing. My biggest tip would be when you're shopping for back to school supplies and getting ready for back to school, make advocacy a part of your back to school. Research what's going on in your school, become your child's best advocate, become your family's best advocate, ask the questions that need to be asked. And a lot of parents have been away from each other for a while. It hasn't just been the students. Right. Don't be afraid to go up to your child's friends' parents and have a conversation with them. Whatever you're thinking and feeling, they're probably thinking and feeling too. So, don't be afraid to connect with people. It's our kids are getting back to connecting, but as parents, we have to get back to connecting with one another as well.
Absolutely. Jamila stole my answer. No, I mean, I think again, I agree with Jamila. Specifically, when we talked about what parents can do, there actually is a National Parent Union Bill of Rights on the National Parent Union site, and it actually gives you some tips and some information for things to ask for when you're thinking about your school reopening and when you're talking to your school administration about your school reopening. Parents, make sure you're in those conversations. Make sure your voice is as part of those conversations, but also encourage your middle schooler or teenager to also be part of those conversations. We as parents are second as stakeholders because we're the deciders. We've decided to make these choices for our children, but our children are actually the receivers. So they're first. So it's really about what they're receiving, the educational quality and the experience that they're having within the school network. So their voices are important in these conversations as well. So while, you're packing your advocacy and thinking about your advocacy as a parent, also encourage your child to also be an advocate for themselves within their school districts. And please join the National Parents Union at www.nationalparentsunion.org. Thank you.
But use my name, Rashana Cosby, though, because
join us. It's a parent revolution. Join us across the nation.
Absolutely. You know? Thank you for having me. Awesome talking to you, ladies. Thank you.
Yep. Make sure you guys are tuned in. I'll see you soon. We'll talk offline if you have anything else, or you have any, ideas about what we can do to continue to advocate for our families and our children as we go back COVID-19.
Yeah.
Ladies, thank you so much. Stay well.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Nice.
All right.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye-bye. All right.
Wait, I'm gonna hold on.